For those of you who don't know me, I am Andy Venables, CEO and founder here at Hills Green, and we're going to be talking all things strategy. So start of the year, I think whether you are the financial year is your calendar year or whether it is a different time of the year, I always feel in January, people start with those goals. What am I looking to achieve in those next 12 months? Where are we going as a business or personally? And we felt that, you know what, it's probably a real good chance to talk about marketing strategy. So I am pleased to be joined by two of my colleagues. We've got Ed and Emma on the call today. So I'm just going to start by Ed, if you just give a quick introduction to yourself.
So my name is Edward Seed. I'm the sales and marketing manager for Hills Green. I am come from a dairy farming background, and I've worked with a couple of big companies inside the industry, but my background is very much on strategy, which is why I'm so excited for today.
Thank you. And Em?
And yeah, I'm Emma Beadle. I'm paid media manager here at Hills Green. I've got about 8 years agency experience, mainly in pharmaceuticals, but then also I did grow up on a pig farm in East Yorkshire, so I still have those agricultural ties that fit in quite nicely with Hills Green.
Thanks, guys. So for those of you who've not joined one of Hills Green's webinars before, we try and keep things quite informal, so it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. It's, I suppose, a bit of an open conversation between myself, Ed, and Emma. So there will be opportunities for you to join in. If you're not used Google Meets, down at the bottom right-hand side, you can just click the square icon with some lines on there, so you can chat to us or ask a question. We have got a couple of polls that we'll probably launch as well, just to get a feeling on terms of where you're at with things. But where I am going to start is how we approach talking about strategy at Hills Green. So this is one slide that I am going to share with you. So just bear in mind here. So we look at this as our roadmap to success. What are the ingredients needed to ensure that our marketing works and achieves the objectives? So our first point of call is about your brand. Are we really clear in terms of who you are as a brand? What you stand for, where you're going, the target audience that you're looking to reach? Because we often say if you're not really clear on those business fundamentals, it's the sort of foundations of the marketing, then it starts to become a bit crumbly, and therefore the rest of the marketing might not just perform as well as it possibly could do, because we haven't done the groundwork first and foremost. I think it is important to also say at this point, when you're putting together any marketing strategy, this is on the assumption that there is some form of business strategy that's been set at a leadership level. You know, the team that are running the business have decided that this is the direction of travel that we're going on. This is what we want to go and achieve. Because without that clear direction at a leadership level, it's very hard for the marketing team to actually put together a strategy that's going to work if they're a bit unsure about what that end goal is in terms of the objectives. The other thing that's important to say at this point is it's a given that whatever you are marketing is a shit hot product or service. You really believe in what you're selling. It's really something that's going to meet the needs of that audience, help that audience with that pain point or that challenge that they've got. So that aside, we work on a brand, the fundamentals. Are we really clear in terms of what we stand for and who we're trying to reach as a brand? The next bit is in terms of your marketing performance. So often I say within marketing is let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Let's look at what's working and what's not working before we start looking at any other shiny things that we can do from a marketing perspective. So how much work have we done to sort of analyze what data have we got in terms of what marketing activity is working and not working? And then the third thing is the audience. I touched on it. We've got to understand it from a brand perspective, but this is a deep understanding of the audience that we're trying to reach. Here at Hills Green, we do a lot of work in terms of helping brands reach farmers and rural audiences. So we survey them, we talk to them, we have focus groups, we really start to get a deep understanding of what are their pain points, what are their challenges, what content they like, they dislike, what channels they use and what influencers are following, etc. Because with a deep understanding of that audience, then that allows us to put together marketing that work. And that marketing that works is your strategy. This is the strategic roadmap, right? So before you go about sort of now going to create a strategy, we need to have those first pillars are sort of like dealt with, so to speak. And with that strategic roadmap, that's when it all starts to come together. That's when we start to get a clear direction in terms of what the objectives are, what the USPs are, what the audience is, and therefore tactically what channels we're going to use. And if we get all of that right, we should be able to deliver a clear return on investment. Now, in terms of what underpins all of that, for those of you who know Hills Green well enough, it's all about that data-first approach, that data-driven approach. Making sure that we're using data to inform what we're doing and not just opinion. But we feel if you use the data, you have a real commercial focus. This isn't just about making something look pretty and get in front of eyeballs. This is about tangibly driving more leads or sales. If we've got a deep understanding of the audience, then we get some results. So we've just had quite a few people just join us. For those who are just joining the call, we are talking all things marketing strategy today, and I've just talked through our roadmap to success, what we use with clients in terms of to help build their marketing strategy. But now I'm going to shut this screen and go to Ed and Emma, and we're going to launch our first poll. So I think this will allow us to start that initial discussion, right? So again, for those people that have not used polls, jump down to the bottom right hand corner of your screens, click on those dots there, and you should be able to see the polls. And I will launch this now. Try and find the button. Okay, so we'd just like to understand, how would you describe your current marketing strategy? So we have a clear marketing strategy aligned to the business goals. We have a strategy, but it changes quite often, or our strategy is mostly reactive, or the last one, we don't have a clearly defined strategy. So just give you 30 seconds there just to vote. Okay, I'd say probably a fairly mixed bag there from what people are saying. There's a few of you that feel that you do have a clear marketing strategy aligned to your business goals. Some of you saying we have a strategy, but it changes often. Some have quite a reactive strategy. Well, I think this is nearly the winner. So, yeah, it is the winner now. Thank you for the last person that's voted there. 7 of you don't have a clearly defined strategy. So, Ed, I'm going to come straight to you here with, what are the core business goals that our marketing strategy needs to support?
It needs to just be completely based on sales and revenue. I think from my point of view, sales and marketing just always go hand in hand. And the point of a business is making sales and acquiring new customers. And based on what is the revenue goal or market growth goal of that business, that's sort of how you work backwards inside marketing, in my opinion.
Okay. And I suppose we often talk when we're starting to create a strategy, you know, when we're starting to talk initially with the clients, understanding what is that winning aspiration? What are we trying to achieve from it? So do you want to talk a bit about how that might affect us when we're actually creating that strategy?
Yes, so I guess kind of once you've defined like a winning strategy or like a goal that you have in mind, that might actually differ from channel to channel. So you would need a different strategy if you plan on reaching one audience on Meta, for example, to a different audience on LinkedIn. And I think it is okay to have a reactive strategy. And once you've learned, for example, that one thing's working well, then you can tweak the strategy, but then it would need to adapt for different channels and different audiences. But yeah, keep that winning kind of aspiration in mind, and then tweak your strategy for those different channels.
And I think just to touch on that, for those people again that have just joined, is there needs to be that winning aspiration set at a business level. We need to make sure that the leadership team, the business have decided this is the direction of travel that we're going, and this is what we want to achieve as a business. Because without that insight and that clear direction, the marketing team, those people that are responsible for marketing, are really unsure about what path to take, and therefore what their winning aspiration from a marketing perspective really is. And then the other thing that I want to just touch on before we start getting deep in the realms of strategy is I often feel that with a strategy, you're thinking like it's a 20, 30 page document. It's something that requires, a lot of brain power and a lot of people involved to develop a strategy. But some of the best strategies that I've seen can be written on 2 pages. Ed, I think we tend to talk about keep it simple, stupid quite a lot. But do you want to just talk about, when we're creating a strategy, what should the end piece look like?
It should be something that's quite easily understandable. And I think there's a common trope inside marketing strategy that there could be this really convoluted, complex, really almost mystical piece of work, when in reality, it's just something that should be quite easily digestible. It shouldn't be this really finite detail thing of I'm going to do this on this date and then we're going to do this on this date. It should just be more of a big picture piece of this is actually how we're going to go and win this market. This is this is the current state of the market, and this is how we're going to react to it. And I'm a really big believer that in reality, a strategy is just your theory. It's just your theory of how you're going to get from A to B. So how are you going to increase sales by 20%, for example? This is my theory of what it's going to be done. And this is where the differentiation between a strategy and a plan is. The strategy should really be that pure big picture sense of this is the broad steps we're going to take to do this. This is what I need to do to get to that scenario.
And I suppose quite naively, when we had a team conversation a few months ago, I referred to strategy being your plan, but then I got challenged on it. So do you want to talk about why strategy is different to a plan?
Yeah, so a strategy and a plan are different because a plan is almost how you will set out to achieve that. And your strategy is more like Ed said, your bigger picture. So you might have a plan to reach a certain audience on Meta, but that is not necessarily your strategy. So within your strategy, you can feed in like your aims, your objectives, if you want leads, if you want revenue, and then your kind of plan is what you will do to go on and get those leads. If you want revenue, and then your kind of plan is what you will do to go on and get those leads. So I think it is important to note that like your plan can constantly change and also your strategy can constantly change. But as long as you kind of have that like bigger key piece objective in mind that you want to kind of stick with, then coming up with a plan is equally almost just as important to then reach that strategy.
So just on that point then, you talk about plan or strategy could change. Typically, what causes that marketing strategy to change during the period?
Say, for example, if we've launched a campaign on Meta and the main objective of the campaign was leads, but actually we have some background campaigns running supporting like revenue and generating sales. If we find that, for example, that campaign is performing really well and we're seeing a lot of revenue come from that channel, we actually know, okay, there's a missed opportunity here. We need to be like also pushing for revenue. So then like bigger picture that could feed into the strategy, like, okay, we could almost be generating more revenue here whilst also generating leads. So it is kind of like you have to be adaptable just so that you don't miss out on wider business opportunities.
Yeah, and I think in that answer, you've probably articulated one of the challenges or opportunities that we uncovered with one of our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk all day about case studies that we have. I don't know if you want me to go into it now, Andy, or later on, but we had a particular client that came to us last August time. So Hexby, they were generating a lot of revenue, kind of doing really well as it was. And when they came to us, we kind of helped out with the strategy. We kind of went away, did a bit of a research piece and found that actually their audiences were on multiple touch points. So rather than just running with Meta, we actually started running with Meta, Google Ads, and also Snapchat. So Snapchat was a channel that the business hadn't used previously. So we kind of went away, fed that into the strategy, and then the plan kind of showed how we would reach those different audiences on those different channels. It did take some tweaking. Obviously, like the first month or so of being live, you do get a lot of learnings from those channels. And then it's nice to always feedback and update that strategy. And like I said, like plans do change and there is nothing wrong with that. But it just kind of highlights that a good strategy can unlock so much more potential for the business.
Yeah, and I think just before we start getting any deeper, I think the other differentiation between the strategy and the plan is yes, strategy is top level, but it's also a decision on what we're not going to do just as much as what we are going to do, you know, and get really clear of that. The number of times that I deal with clients where you're trying to do everything and spread yourself quite thinly, and as that age-old saying, 50% of my marketing's working, I'm just not sure which 50%. But layered on the fact of that, you're not giving certain channels the real space to achieve because you're trying to do too much. None of it seems to be performing at the level that you want it to. So that strategy piece has got to be some of those decisions of what aren't we going to do just as much as about what we are going to do. So when I went through the roadmap with you, we talked about brand, and that for me is the foundations of a strategy. Are we really clear as an organization, as a brand, what we stand for? And therefore, whether that is a one-pager or whether you're a business that's really spent time on this and you started to create your own brand strategy, so to speak, that may vary, or you might not have done any work on it. Just going to put up the next poll here, which is all about that brand strategy. So how clearly defined is your brand strategy? Very clearly defined, it's well used. If I was to ask one of the leadership team in terms of why do we exist, what are we all about, would they give me the same answer as somebody that started in the last couple of weeks? Is your brand strategy defined but not always applied? It's loosely defined or not clearly defined at all. So just take a couple of seconds there to put what your gut feel is when it comes to your brand strategy.
Sorry, Andy, as well. I know we've had a few new people join the call, so if you're struggling to get to the poll, it's just in the bottom corner. If you hit bottom right corner, if you click the dots, and then there's the option there to vote in the polls.
Thanks, Em. So I think most of the results are coming here, and the clear winner is, I think it's defined, but not always applied. So Ed, I'll come straight to you in terms of what role does brand strategy play in supporting your business goals?
It's your brand strategy is almost your story. It's so important when it comes to actually being the reason why people go for you. And in supporting your business goals, your brand strategy is going to be around how strong of a foundation do you actually have to launch your marketing strategy. And it's going to really move it down to the point of what you need to get out of your marketing strategy. So if you've got a really strong brand, lots of people trust you, lots of people really like you, they really like your story, your strategy can then move away a bit from your branding. And so you've got that strong foundation in place. But say you're new to market and nobody's heard of you, no one knows of you, your brand strategy is probably going to be the core part of your actual marketing strategy. because you just really need to make sure that it's almost at that brand building phase, and as you know, strategy works in phases. So if you look at it from like an eagle eye point of view, your brand really is going to be what your rest of your marketing is built upon. So if you're there and your brand strategy just isn't hitting the mark and isn't really at a good level, you're probably going to waste a lot of budget trying to do the other things, if that makes sense. If you're going to go and try and do some active sales led marketing, it's probably going to fall down because your brand isn't actually there in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking with a client earlier that's got a brand new product to launch in a market. Nobody knows that this product of what it is in this case exists. You know, and they're actually going to create it as a separate brand because it's very different to their current brand. But people have first of all got to understand why they should even be interested in it. What is the problem that they're solved, and why should I listen to you as an unknown name, because there's not really a brand there, versus someone that's more established in the market. So once those clients have got a good understanding of their brand and who they are, and really clear on why, you know, why anyone should give a shit about their product or service, how does that, Emma, when it comes into looking at almost applying that across channels, make a difference between those businesses that probably a bit more grey when it comes to what the core message is and what they're all about, versus those that have actually got a really clear idea on where they stand as a brand?
Yeah, so once you have kind of a clear ambition, it's important that you kind of avoid like giving those mixed messages across like different channels. So it's important to know like where you choose to win. So your audience needs to find out like what channels you're on, what touch points they can reach you. So are you emailing them? Are you reaching them on Meta? Do you want to hit them on search? So it's like where you choose to win, and then how you will win. So you want to keep a consistent like tone of voice. So you know that if audiences have seen potentially an ad on Google search, if they then get hit with an email, you want to keep that messaging kind of consistent and aligning with your ambition that you've set out. And also finally, you need your audiences to kind of believe in that messaging and kind of that like brand and tone of voice. So it kind of needs to be evident in everything you do. Like, don't just put things out for the sake of it. Like it needs to stay on brand. Okay.
So if anyone there listening has got any questions in relation to brand and that element of forming your marketing strategy, just head down to that bottom right hand corner of the screen. There is a Q&A button there, so you can actually ask the question. But finally for me, Ed, in terms of when it comes to brand, what is your advice to where to start with developing a brand strategy?
So I think first of all, it's just have a look at your current market, see what brands are out there, what brands are resonating well and what aren't. We literally just come off a call before speaking with someone who's looking at building a brand inside agriculture. And there's this big thing around being first to market. And everyone thinks being first to market is great. And there is benefits to it, don't get me wrong. But it also comes with the benefits of knowing what other people are doing and what they're doing wrong and what's doing right. So if you can go into your market and realize that, hang on, there's 12 brands here, each of them pushing British values and doing really well, that should feed into your brand sort of strategy of where you want to go. But it's also understanding like what is actually currently happening inside my market to the actual end user. What is the end user feeling? What pressures are they doing? And what we'll always suggest to do as well is, say you've got 4 or 5 core problems in the market, try and pick 1 or 2 to align your brand with as a solution. So if you're in a machinery market and the market is just needing reliability more than ever because they're needing to keep kit for longer, that's where you start to align your brand more with being solid, well built. But with the problem with this as well, and a lot of people don't understand this with brand, your product is going to be your number 1 brand driver. So if you've got a really good product and you can align your brand strategy with that, it's great. But if you've got a product that isn't great and you're trying to lie almost in your brand, it's not going to really work the same.
No, okay. So I can't see any questions in relation to that. So we'll move on to the next section, which is all about using data and how that sort of drives performance, but also shapes your marketing strategy. So I will launch the next poll. Just give me a sec. Here, so really interesting here in terms of how often do you use past performance data to inform your marketing strategy decisions. So whether that's a sales level or marketing level, but how often are we actually looking at what activity have we done in the last month, last 6 months, last 12 months, and what has that achieved? Has that actually delivered on the objective? So just take a few seconds just to fill that in. Okay, well, it's good to see there's nobody voted that they never look at the data. So always a good tick in the box from my perspective. There is a real split between those people that are consistently looking for it versus those people that are occasionally looking for it. And 4 people rarely looking at it. So this is what we talk about day in, day out at Hills Green, data. As I said in that first slide about our roadmap for success, it's using data to drive decisions and less about gut. So Ed, where do we start? What data is most useful when reviewing a marketing strategy? Where should we start?
Performance data. Always start with performance data. I think one of my favorite ways to define strategy is what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And it's about going back in time, whether it's a year or 5 years, probably won't go further than 5 years, but just really pulling everything together. So whether that's Google Analytics data, whether that's social media data, or whether that is even stuff like the amount of response rates from the shows, even down to sales. And this is where it's about having that data-led approach as a foundation in place. But if you're not looking at sources and attribution, so where you're getting sales from, you can't really make a good response. This is where we're going to play in the market. So if I'm a company, I'm saying I'm a competitor, and I've got a really good understanding of where our attribution is, so where all our sales are coming from, I can quite easily make that strategic decision of which channels we're going to use. If we're seeing social media is working well, we're seeing events working well, but if we're seeing print ads aren't working well, I'm going to really focus on social media and events. But if you don't have that data to begin with, you can't make that decision. So it's about pulling, I suppose, your sales data, and the attribution is the most important. What I'd also say is a little bit of a cool strategy I've seen a few people use now is also use Google search terms. So go into the Google tools, which they come for free, search for how many people are looking at your brand, and so directly type in your brand name into Google. That's actually a pretty good way of controlling and benchmarking. How has my brand awareness changed over the past couple of years? So if you do benchmark it, so from 12-month periods, 2022, 23, 24, 25, and you can correlate, right, how many search terms we've had in that year. That's a good way of seeing where your brand is going. So if your data's basically going upwards and you see more and more searches, your brand's doing well and a lot more people are directly searching it. However, if that's the opposite, you've got a bit of an awareness problem happening and people are slowly forgetting about your brand.
Okay, perfect. So taking that almost from a top level view where Ed's at in terms of probably a bit more granular view in terms of some of the channels that are performance marketing channels, what are the key metrics or key data we should be looking at from those channels to influence a marketing strategy?
Yeah, so I know Ed mentioned that it's like you can look at data from like the past 5 years to help shape your strategy, which is great. But if you don't have like those channels set up, like GA or data going back that far, you can actually like use data from as little as 2 weeks. Like you can get some really important learnings from like specific channels. So for example, if you're wanting to like do a bit of an A/B test, which basically means you're testing like one thing from another, there's many different things you can do on like an organic post or a paid ad, for example. So one week you might decide to test like long copy in the post and see how well that performs. And then when you do a bit of a deeper dive and look at like the click-through rate or cost per click, and then a few weeks later test maybe short form copy, and then after 2 weeks you'll kind of have those back-to-back learnings, because you might find that those audiences want something short and snappy, like the message is easier to get across, and then like going forward, like posts with shorter copy kind of work for you and resonate with that audience. So yeah, that's like a short piece on A/B testing. But then some of like the important metrics that we could be looking at are like the click-through rate, cost per click, kind of like average order value. I basically think any data that you can take from any of your channels would be helpful when feeding into that strategy.
And I think, just to add, because I'm conscious those people that are on the call today, everything from sort of like smaller businesses to global brands, and it all comes down to time. Have we got the time to collect all of this data? And I suppose the one thing that I would just add, really, if you're short on time, let's start at a real top level. So whether it is, we went to Llama last week, okay, well, what was the objective of Llama? Was it to catch up with current clients, or was it to generate leads? If it was to generate leads, out of those 2 days, how many leads did we generate? Divided by the cost, as you get your cost per lead on that perspective. We can really go granular with a lot of this data, and we're all about the 1%, because the deeper we dig, the more informed decisions we can make on that data. But don't forget, okay, well, if I haven't got time to collate all of that data and put it into one place, let's look at the top level. Why are we investing in this? What are we looking to achieve? And then track that top level metric. I suppose on the point of time, because we hear about this quite a lot, in the world of AI, there now is an opportunity to use AI to help you with a lot of that heavy lifting from an analysis perspective. So Ed, this is very much your bag. Do you want to just talk about how you can utilize AI with this data?
It's really never been easier to do high level data analysis, where when you're at a point with the number one thing you need to really do is bring all your data in a readable format. So in an Excel sheet, try and align your data as much as possible. You might need to have 2 or 3 Excel sheets, whether you're pulling social media stats, whether that's you're pulling email stats, sales data, sales volume, or inventory management data. I know some get pulled into that. You can then really just drop that into a ChatGPT or Gemini bot you own. Make sure your business owns it, that it's not a personal one, because that means that data is out there. Then make sure it's a actual business one. But from there, you can really have a lot of fun. And AI is really the most powerful part of it, is that data analysis side. I think a quote I really need to trademark at this point is the red herring of AI is content. Data analysis is really where the most powerful tool it is. And it can pull so many sort of correlations in so many different times that it can really get to the bottom of data a lot quicker, or a lot more granular detail than we can. So I would really recommend doing that. So literally just pull in all your data into different Excels, formatted roughly the same, not necessarily all the same, but roughly similar formats. And then you can really get to the bottom of like a lot more consistent data, especially if you're not a data type of person. If you really don't know where to go with data analysis, you can really basically use AI to do the heavy lifting for you and to pull stats out. And that is definitely something I'd be recommending to do for majority of companies. But I will really say, own the ChatGPT account. Don't have it as a business account. Do not upload this to a personal account.
Thanks, Ed. Very, very good tip. So anybody got any questions when it comes to data analysis, tracking performance data to inform your marketing strategy, then ping that on the Q&A chat. One thing that we do see when it comes to data, and particularly those clients that come in on board, perhaps businesses that have misinterpreted performance data. So I suppose question to both of you here, what should we be looking at here, and what sort of like tips should we do just to make sure that we're not getting the wrong end of the stick when we're looking at performance data?
Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of vanity metrics that can, like, for example, impressions, they might look really high and really good, but then actually if you look at some of the more important metrics, like I mentioned, like the click-through rate or the like cost per click, it might be like other metrics, they're actually a bit more important. Like if you're selling a product, like impressions probably mean less than actual like your ROAS and like your cost per lead, for example. So kind of don't be blinded by impressions and like dig a bit deeper if possible. Quite often now, a lot of the platforms do have like the free kind of data tools that you can kind of just pull all your insights from. So Facebook Business Manager, like that can pull everything out for you, as can LinkedIn, as can Snapchat. It's just a case of like knowing where to look, and at the click of a button, it can automatically do that for you. It does all the legwork.
Perfect. Anything to add to that, Ed?
I think, just to echo what Emma said, really, we're at a point now where the majority of advertising tools or channels we use are more digital channels we use are giving us a lot of useful data now, and they know the value that has. So basically, if you can get as much data as you can out of something, it almost rewards them, because if they can prove to you good data, you're going to use it more. So it is just that there is a lot more options now for you than there was maybe 5-10 years ago to really easily understand data. So just use them mainly.
Okay, and just a couple of questions that have just come through. So what do we feel are the top 3 metrics that a business needs to look into in order to help refine the strategy?
I would literally say acquisition. So basically where you're getting the sales or customers from. Lifetime value. So you need to understand what customers are producing the most value in the grand scheme of things. It's all well and good getting 20,000 customers who are all going to spend £1, but it's much better to get 2,000 customers who are all spending £500 to £1,000 with you. It's just about understanding that lifetime value. And then I suppose from there, I'd really say reach as well. It can be a little bit of a vanity metric, and quite a few people disagree with me from this, but that's a really strong way of understanding, is my marketing actually getting out there? Am I actually getting the reach from this and getting that brand awareness point?
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Em?
Not really. I think Ed's hit the nail on the head there, but obviously it will be different metrics for kind of your different objectives that you would have. So if you're running a campaign for leads, you obviously want to be looking at kind of your cost per leads. And that'd be a lot different to like a conversion campaign, in which case I would look at kind of your cost per click and your ROAS.
Cool. And then one question that's just come in, just touching on that events sort of example that I gave, in terms of how do you measure the success of attending events and marketing spend if they aren't directly generating more business? So is it purely from new leads, and what about current customers? So Ed, with your background in events marketing, you might be best placed to just provide a quick answer to that.
You can still really track events. I'd recommend recording conversations had, especially if you've got a good CRM. You want to be putting as much in there as you can. So if they aren't directly generating more business, I would really be saying, looking at what leads you're having, what and for any current customers, reorder rate is something you should be looking at as well. So if you are tracking, like, I spoke to this customer at Llama last week, they've reordered, and you can then, if you also still successfully attributing that, it will start to paint a picture of which events are worth it and which aren't. Events traditionally are seen as something that's really hard to track, but you just need to make sure you're putting the right processes in place. And I think really the best process you can put in place is just that data tracking, capturing data, sorry. And a way you can do this, which I mentioned before as well, is also looking post-event how many Google searches you've had. There isn't a lot of people who will visit your stand and maybe haven't done something on your stand. It can still correlate to that brand awareness, or someone will just actively search for you and look at your website post-event. So that's also quite a nice way of seeing if there's an indication or not.
Yeah, and last piece that I will just add, we do have clients, and I've used this example many times before, that it isn't necessarily about generating leads, it's about building that relationship with their current clients. But why not also use it as a market research exercise? Why not use it as a way to really get a bit more deeper understanding to your audience? What are their biggest challenge at the minute, biggest pain points? Because it's not necessarily saying that your product or service can mitigate that challenge or help them with that pain point, but it definitely allows you to tweak and change how you work with that audience if you got a real understanding of what's keeping them awake at night and what their biggest challenges are. Which leads me quite nicely into audience. So the next piece within a marketing strategy would look at in terms of how confident that you are in terms of understanding how your audience makes buying decisions. You know, how well do we understand our audience and who they are? So those people that have read our Marketing to Farmers report may be a little bit more clued up on the farmer audience and their needs, wants, desires, challenges. But in particular for your business, you know, how confident are you at, I suppose, understanding that audience? So just head down to the poll in the bottom right-hand corner and just put there, very confident, fairly confident, somewhat confident, or not confident at all. Okay, so some of the votes are coming in. I think the majority are fairly confident, a couple of people somewhat confident, a couple of people saying that they are very confident. Fairly confident seems to be the clear winner there. So Emma, when we talk about audience, I suppose it's important to not just consider who is the person with the checkbook, who buys that product or makes that decision on that service that they're going to invest in. So what do we think about the influencer audiences, not in terms of those content creators, but those people that are going to influence decisions?
Yeah, so I think this ties into like a really nice multi-channel approach. As you mentioned, there's a nice piece on this in the Marketing to Farmers report, but quite often it's not just the person with the checkbook that's signing it off at the end of the day. Like, you think the amount of people that are on a farm, there's the maybe younger employees that are constantly online, looking at new products, seeing what's out there, seeing what's trendy, and then they'll feed into these decisions. They might go home, speak to their parents, speak to their employees, and it's like people like that are feeding into decisions. So it's important to consider like what channels they're on. And then you might also have like a different persona, maybe like the farmer's wife, who again does a lot of research, she's doing a lot of background information. Ultimately, she might be on a different touch point. We often look at LinkedIn as well as a bit more of a professional channel. So you want to look at those kind of like key decision makers who might be on a different channel. So it's important to like feed into the fact that you might not necessarily just want to reach that one person that's buying the product, but there's a lot of people that will influence that buying decision. And ultimately, the strategy must feed in where and how you will reach these different kind of buying influencers.
Thanks, Em. And I think probably what I've tended to find in the many years I've now been working within the agriculture and rural sector is assumptions. We all know what our farmers or what our audiences want. So Ed, you know, where do assumptions most often creep into that marketing strategy?
I spoke about this a lot recently, I suppose over the past year, and especially as part of our Marketing to Farmers Day, whenever we were giving a presentation on the report. If you'd asked any person in the past year who isn't necessarily a farmer but markets to farmers, let's say, the number one challenge, I'm sure everyone would have probably said inheritance tax. And I think this, whether we've got brought into the news cycle, whether we've been pulled in by it, or it's just the buzzword that's about. But the Market Forward report this year actually showed that the top 4 actual problems are the same problems that have been for the past couple of years: input cost, cash flow, profit, and labour. Don't be wrong, inheritance tax was up there. I think it was like number 6 or number 5. But the assumptions come from thinking you understand what your direct audience are doing based on whether it's just gut feelings or what you're feeling about the market. And it's like I said, it's okay to have that theory, but it's about you to go out and prove it. So whether that is by picking up the phone or using market data or going out and actually doing a bit of market report. But the problem with assumptions, you bring assumptions into your strategy, that is where things can really, really go down the wrong direction. And if you base your entire marketing over a problem that you think, oh, my audience is really feeling, but you don't actually know that, your messaging and everything below that is going to start to really miss the mark.
So that's a nice segue to the next bit, really, in terms of audience insight, how that basically shapes messaging and the channel choice. So I know we've talked about in so many different situations with clients that have got that multi-channel approach, but how should that understanding of the audience shape the messaging and therefore the channel that we use as well?
So to use LinkedIn as an example, I mentioned there's a lot more kind of like key decision makers on that platform. So when it comes to like putting a post out or putting an ad out, you would like tweak your messaging to that kind of more professional audience. So you'd maybe kind of make it a bit more educational, a bit more informative, so that people are kind of like learning something from your posts. Whereas on Meta, typically people go on that channel kind of when they've maybe switched off on an evening, they just kind of want to have a bit of a scroll, turn off, like you maybe want something a bit shorter and sweeter that they can click on and then like go through to your site. So it is about kind of understanding what message to put out on what channel, and then also kind of like what formats to use. So for example, to use Snapchat or TikTok, like people want fast content that they can consume quickly. So it would obviously be best to like use a video on those channels rather than like maybe a static posts. But like in the previous section we touched on, this is where your A/B testing and learning from data really feeds in. Like if you know that a specific sort of imagery or carousel is working well on Meta, like stick with it, like keep going with it. You don't have to constantly be refreshing your ads if something well's working. Just kind of like tweak it and go with it if you have data to back that up. It can work.
Perfect. So as we just wrap this section up, if anybody's got any questions in relation to audience, ping them in the Q&A. But one thing that you tend to find, particularly in the agri-rural space, is around seasonality. So how should that influence your marketing strategy, Ed?
So it's funny with change because although a lot of business owners and managing directors would like market managers to have a crystal ball and to be able to read it really well, the future is a hell of an uncertain thing. And to have a strategy, and I'm not saying to change your strategy based on every single hurdle, but you need to have some sort of contingencies in your strategy of where I'm going to go down. Because if someone comes into the market and launches a new product halfway through a year, that is really going to change your strategy. Or if there's a different market circumstance in the year, that needs to change your strategy as well. So it's about almost reading the market and understanding, right, what is actually happening? How can this actually affect us? And this really does feed back to what I was saying around your strategy is your theory. Go out and try and prove it or disprove it. And if you disprove it, you'll find probably only about 20% of it's wrong. So that's when the time is to adjust. But don't do that off assumptions, do that off hard data.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into the final poll. So head down to that right-hand side of your screen again. final poll just live there. So how well does your current marketing strategy adapt when things change? So either very well, reasonably well, not very well, or it struggles. So just post your vote now. Okay, so I think we have a fair winner there that reasonably well. We quite adaptable as a group here. A couple of people feel it's really well, and a few people not so well. So, what most often disrupts marketing strategies during a year? What comes up that means that, you know what, we need to put a stop, we need to regroup, we need to look, do we go down a different road? And we've talked about roads and roundabouts many times in client meetings before, but when do we need to sort of come back to that roundabout and decide if we need to take a different turning?
Yeah, so I feel like there's loads of different disruptions in this industry, depending on where your strategy goes, like just based on kind of seasonality, your product availability, kind of demand swings, kind of what competitors you've got out there. But if you're kind of aware of this at the start, that potentially in summer things might change for you, you might need to change your messaging and your strategy based on kind of like different seasonal factors. As long as you're ahead of that and ready for when that season comes, you shouldn't be hit with difficulties at that time. Like, I know you can't always control the weather or what difficulties do come in, but if you're kind of prepared for those different like demand swings and like peaks and troughs, like we mentioned, your strategy can be easily adaptable.
And it's about planning for it. We see quite often, I was talking about Aldi earlier on, and do you know what I mean? They don't necessarily know what weekend in the spring sunshine when it's going to come, but they do know it is going to come. So they already have the strategy, they have the products ready, they have barbecue offers or whatever, and as soon as they know that it's going to come, they're ready to launch. So I suppose it's about preempting something that you know that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But also there's the times when things just happen beyond your control, like IHT, maybe the perfect example. You know, we had no idea that was going to come in the mix. So just adapting to what's going on in the market. And I suppose, Ed, just to come to you in terms of how do you try and adapt your marketing strategy without losing the direction in which it's set? Because what we set at the beginning of the year was in line with our business strategy, and this is what the business needs to achieve. So how do we adapt without almost completely going in a different direction?
I'm going to use a crude example of football here. So you've got a football pitch and you're playing a football game. It doesn't matter whether it's raining. It doesn't matter whether you're down to 10 men. It doesn't matter whether whatever's happened, whether it's snowing, whether there's been loads of different things that happen or factors come into it. Your goal is still at the other end of the pitch, and you're still going to go there and try and shoot into it. So it's about having that North Star metric. What is your overall business goal? Is it revenue? Is it leads? Is it sort of customer acquisition? If you've got that right at the top of your page and everything you do feeds into that, that's why I like calling it a North Star, because that's what's going to keep you on track all the time. What changes underneath it can change and the strategy might adjust, but your North Star is still there and you're still aiming straight towards it.
Perfect. And I think you've probably, in a way, just answered one of the questions that's come up in terms of just clarifying. Are you right to say that a marketing strategy should be fluid in order to adjust and adapt to how things go? Yeah,
definitely. It's whether fluid's the right term, but it should definitely be able to adjust. I'm going to steal another analogy from someone I can't remember, but it was using it for example of old-fashioned ships, wooden ships. They weren't built to be rigid, because if they went onto the sea, if it hit something like a hard wave, it just crack. They were built to move and adjust through time. I like to see it as that. It's something that's still quite firm and still can carry you forward, but it's not going to completely just it's not so stiff that as soon as something hard hits it, it's just going to erupt, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Listen, guys, we're coming up to 3 o'clock. I'm conscious we started a couple of minutes late. We'd got a few technical difficulties, and I really do apologise if you didn't get the email, first of all, and didn't get the link and join late. We will make sure that the recording of this session goes out on YouTube, and we'll follow up with it. So if you missed the start of it, we'll send that over. If you have got any final questions that you'd like to ask before we wrap up, just ping them in the Q&A. But I'm going to sort of come to the final question for me, really, in terms of Ed. What's the one takeaway you could give to those listening in terms of that would help ensure that their 2026 marketing strategy is in a stronger place?
Get yourself a really good habit of data tracking. If you can, like, data is the most fundamental important thing when it comes to strategy, and the longer you ignore it, only the bigger an issue it's going to get. So get to really understand what your data points are, what are your key metrics you should be tracking, and how you're going to do that.
Perfect. And Em, what's sort of the one takeaway you would give as well to help those guys get a stronger marketing strategy this year?
Yeah, just to repeat Ed's point, I was going to say, go away and look at your existing data and feed that into your strategy. Even if you take 5, 10, 15 minutes going through it, it's actually quite insightful what you will find when you start digging into that data. So feed this into your strategy before making any kind of like fast and loose decisions.
Perfect. Well, I can't see any other questions coming through, but by all means, if something comes up after today, get in touch with myself, Ed, or Em, and we would be more than happy to pick that up with you. We've tried to cram a lot in an hour. Marketing strategy, all of us probably could talk about it all day. We do work with clients where we can support you in developing these strategies, running marketing, planning workshops, etc. So if that sounds of interest, you need a third party just to help develop that, please get in touch. But final thing from me, really, just thank you very much for taking the time to join. Thanks, Ed and Em, for giving your expertise. And we will be in touch in the next month with February's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.